Joining us now, Eylon Levy. He is the Israeli government spokesperson. Welcome back and thank you for your time. I was listening to the remarks by the Israeli Minister of Defense moments ago, Yoav Gallant, and he said of the complexities of war that there are challenges right now for the IDF. What are those challenges specifically now in day 72 of fighting Hamas?
Israel is dealing with a tremendously difficult battlefield since Hamas has spent the last 16 years deliberately embedding itself underneath schools, under homes, under mosques, and under hospitals. And the Americans have spoken about this as well, that Israel faces an incredible challenge trying to target the Hamas terrorists when they are deliberately hiding behind civilians and have spent all their years in power building their military machine under civilian areas. Just now on your screen, you're showing the incredible tunnel system that Hamas built underneath the Gaza Strip. It's as wide as a subway tunnel. That's how big it is, and that's how much concrete Hamas diverted from the people of Gaza towards its terror machine. So as we go after the monsters who perpetrated the October 7th massacre, we have to do everything we can to get civilians out of harm's way, even though Hamas is deliberately trying to hide behind them, because Hamas's whole strategy is based on human shields. They're trying to maximize casualties on their own side to generate international sympathy, to generate diplomatic pressure in the hope that that will make us stop and they'll get away with the 10/7 massacre.
It was breathtaking to see one of the mothers of the 3 hostages that were killed on Friday at the funeral over the weekend. I know you've seen this as well and share in the heartbreak. How have those deaths caught in friendly fire changed the approach on the ground? What are the conversations around that?
Israeli society is shocked and traumatized. This should never have happened. These 3 young men should have been brought home safely, and this was a tragic and horrific mistake. The hostage issue is a very personal issue for Israel. 250 hostages in a country of only 10 million people means everyone knows someone who was abducted, and many Israelis like me are walking around with this dog tag, just like John Kirby did at his press conference. It says, "Bring them home now." And in Hebrew, our hearts are trapped in Gaza. Now, our policy to get the hostages back, because time is running out for them, is to continue putting unrelenting military pressure on Hamas, because that is the only thing that will force Hamas to release hostages. It happened the last time. We had a hostage release pause. In exchange for giving us back women and children, Hamas wanted a pause for a few days in the fighting. They gave us hostages. We gave them a few days of a breather. And then Hamas decided to resume rocket fire at Israel and not to return all the women and children as they had been promising. So our chief of staff in the army has made it very clear what the rules of engagement are, the caution that our soldiers have to take in a very complicated battlefield where Hamas is constantly trying to lure our soldiers into ambushes in dense urban fighting. And we're going to continue putting military pressure on Hamas. We are committed to that pledge as a state, as a government, and as a nation. There will be no one left behind.
And the longer it goes without the hostages being released and Hamas's inability to negotiate and continue on the path of destruction as they have, does that indicate to you the well-being of the hostages is in question? We know every day matters, that how many are still alive?
Of course, the well-being of the hostages is the top priority for us. We already know from testimonies of survivors of the Hamas terror dungeons of the physical abuse, the psychological abuse, the emotional abuse, the sexual abuse that some of the hostages have suffered there, without medication, having complex injuries, being treated without anesthetic by a vet in the best case circumstances. There's a hostage in there who had an arm blown off during the atrocities of October 7th, and Hamas isn't giving access to the Red Cross. And the Red Cross is not pressuring Hamas in order to see them. So everyone here in Israel is sick with worry for the fate of the hostages, and Hamas has been torturing them. Just think of poor Yarden Bibas, 34 years old. His wife and 2 children were abducted, and they're still there. Hamas claims that they're dead, and Hamas filmed a sick psychological propaganda video telling this poor man that his children had been killed, only to see him break down on camera. We're sick with worry for them, and we're demanding immediate access for the Red Cross so they can get medical treatment before their immediate and unconditional return home.
I'm glad you brought that.
And by the way, we know that at least 20 of them have been murdered. as well. Of those 129 hostages, at least 20 have since been murdered in captivity.
I appreciate that you brought up the Bibas family, those two little boys, both with red hair. We've seen them on our television screens for the last couple of months. The Red Cross, as you mentioned, has been neutral. That's the criticism on them right now. What pressure is Israel putting on the Red Cross to get more involved in what we're seeing, to play a more active role?
The Red Cross has not been neutral. Unfortunately, in many ways, its officials have been complicit with Hamas's war of propaganda. Because the Red Cross and the World Health Organization are doing everything right now to avoid admitting that Hamas is stealing aid and wages war out of hospitals. They keep telling us that hospitals must be protected, and they're completely right. And we think it's outrageous that they have not once condemned Hamas for exploiting ambulances and fighting war out of hospitals. And in that, they have been lending a hand to the war effort that Hamas has been waging against us. And we are demanding accountability from international institutions about what they knew and why they have not seen anything. And you showed these images of poor civilians in Gaza raiding the aid trucks, and our hearts go out to them. Because they know that Hamas is stealing aid, and they know that the international agencies that are feigning concern for them have not and will not condemn the army of terror that is stealing aid from the civilians who desperately need it. So it's so much worse than neutrality.
The complexities of war playing out every single day. As always, Mr. Levy, thank you for your time. And as the Israel Minister of Defense said, fighting the brutal enemy, using civilians as shield, a victory for Israel is one for the free world. I will see you again soon, sir.
Thank you, Moni.
Now to Capitol Hill.